My life's a story before me, and I'll try and find a way to be free finally. I'll reach the new world. The game has only just begun. I can see it in your eyes. This is where tomorrow brings a new game. It's time to learn, the pain is gain. Ready, fight!
Hey guys, what's going on? It's your boy Bowser Jr. Fan 13, and man, it's been a long time since I've uploaded something, haven't I? Well, enough said. It's time. So welcome back finally to another Marvel vs. Capcom 4 discussion video. And of course, we are finally here at the topics that I'm pretty sure fans were really excited to hear about. So it's time to wrap things up and time to get to the point. So let's get on to the next topic. Now when it comes to future fighting games, there's one thing and one thing only that most fighting games need to have: downloadable content, or of course DLC for short. Now when it comes to Marvel vs. Capcom, they didn't really have much DLC in Marvel vs. Capcom 3. It was more of a separate disc DLC for Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3, and I can tell fans didn't really like it. I mean, the only piece of DLC we actually got in that game was Jill Valentine and Shuma Gorath, and that was just about it. It was nothing special. And in Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, the DLC was very underwhelming. I mean, don't get me wrong, Sigma, Black Panther, Monster Hunter, and Venom, they were good DLC characters, but not Winter Soldier and Black Widow. And I do apologize to people who like those characters, but I don't know, because of them, I think the DLC was extremely underwhelming. So what type of DLC will we have for Marvel vs. Capcom 4? Well, I'm glad you asked, because we're going to be getting tons of DLC, some new characters and new stages, and of course more alternate costumes. And I have a ton of ideas for alternate costumes, but I'm just going to hold that down for now, because right now the stages, well, it's going to play a big part of the DLC story mode. Like, the story mode is not DLC, but it's gonna have like a bonus DLC story for some DLC characters, just like how Blaze Blue Cross Tag Battle had something like that. And the stages, of course, it's also gonna be centered around DLC. Maybe we'll bring back some old stages from Marvel vs. Capcom 2 and 3, and maybe Marvel vs. Capcom 1, or some other original stages. Like, I really don't have the time to list out all the stages that I'm bringing back, but just use your imagination and think about what you think I'll be doing. But these other DLC stages, like, that are original, I wanted to have them be a mixture of both Marvel and Capcom stages. Basically, like, just to celebrate the game, Marvel vs. Capcom 4, have it advertised over cities and malls, and basically any type of city or location that you could think of. Kind of like how Street Fighter V did it. But anyways, let's get down to the DLC characters themselves. Alright, so there's going to be 3 seasons of DLC characters. Alright, and I'll be discussing what type of characters are going to be in this game one by one throughout this whole video. So to start things off, we'll start out with the Season 1 DLC cast. Alright, this DLC Seasons Pass will consist of 20 DLC characters. 10 from Marvel, 10 from Capcom. Half of them are returning characters, and the other half are brand new characters. Oh, and if you don't want to buy them in a whole pack, and you only want to buy certain characters, you can buy each of these characters very separately if you want. I'd say the DLC characters themselves would just be $2. Like, I don't know, like maybe $1.99 each. Or the whole DLC pack will probably be, I guess maybe, I guess $30 if you want to buy the whole entire thing. I know that sounds weird, but I'm not trying to be like too expensive to dissatisfy fans, but let's get into the characters anyway. So for the Capcom side, we are bringing back Arthur, Mega Man X, Trish, Albert Wesker, and Akuma. Meanwhile, the new characters are going to be Batsu, Poison, Miles Edgeworth, Captain Blue, and Donovan. And of course, on the Marvel side, we are bringing back Gamora, Nova, Shumagorath, War Machine, and Dormammu. And the new characters are going to be Shang-Chi, Red Skull, Crossbones, Mr. Fantastic, and Adam Warlock. I'm not going to go over what their movesets are going to be or what type of alternate costumes there are going to be, because like this is like what, part 9 of this series, and like we are like really far from all that. But I will tell you this, I do like this cool idea that Throgi Arcade just came up when he was making his Marvel vs. Capcom 4 video. Basically, there's this idea that he came up with, like, how about when these DLC characters come out, you could have them be released and available in the story mode, only in certain scenarios where they could be playable, or you could have them be playable for free only in the training mode for the first 2 weeks that they come out, so that, you know, you get to like practice their combos and their movesets and mechanics and stuff, and see if this character is worth spending your money on. I love that idea, and I think we should definitely implement that into here. So that's Season 1's DLC. Now let's get into the one thing that I know a certain somebody has been waiting to hear for quite a long time. Yeps, that's right. This game is getting a story mode. Cause you know how fighting games nowadays basically need story modes and all that stuff to like satisfy fans or get them busy when it comes to single player content and stuff. Alright, so last time I remember, the Marvel vs. Capcom series doesn't really have that much of a story mode. It's mostly implemented in the arcade modes, or basically just character endings and stuff. But Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite has story mode, and I'm gonna be honest, it wasn't really that good. My god, like, I know there are a lot of people who hate on the story mode and say that it's not good, it's very boring, and it's very lackluster and depressing and underwhelming. I mean, I feel you, because I felt the same way as when I played that story mode too. But I will tell you, there were some concepts that I thought were pretty cool and well worth keeping. In fact, I think I have to agree on Throgi Arcade with this idea once again. You know what? Like, I didn't even want to come up with my own story mode. Like, I loved Throgi Arcade's idea of a story. Like, I wanted to use his story mode for my version of MVC4, but it's not going to be entirely the same thing as his, because there are going to be a bunch of differences with the story mode, and there are going to be some big key elements that I'm going to add that makes it much different from his. So anyways, I won't explain how his story mode happened. Like, I'm gonna let him himself basically explain everything, because I have this recorded audio of him explaining how the story mode is going to go down, so that I don't have to keep on constantly rambling and editing everything out and such, so that way things will be much easier. So anyways, take it away, Throgi.
For this story mode, we start off with the Avengers stopping Loki's latest scheme. Loki escapes so he can lick his wounds and curse how the Avengers always stop him. He's tried taking the Infinity Stones, the Cosmic Cube, ISO 8. Every time he tries to get his hand on a powerful artifact, the Avengers always beat him to it. No matter where he goes in the universe, they're always there. But that's when it hits him. What if he could find another universe? One without the Avengers, but with their own powerful weapons. Using his magic, he searches through countless universes until he finds one that stands out. He can sense a powerful weapon coming from there, a set of gems that reminds him of the Infinity Stones, but are still unique in their own way. Traveling to this world, he arrives in the Power Stone reality, where he gets his hands on the Power Stones, and after studying them, he finds that even though they can give their wielder a serious power boost, they pale in comparison to the weapons of his reality. But he can sense that their power is incomplete. Much like the Infinity Stones, these stones draw power from the reality that they're in, and after dissecting them with his spells, he learns there's a reason why they're not as strong as they could be. Because this reality isn't like any he's ever seen. It isn't whole. It's actually just a sliver of several realities all linked together by invisible threads. So the answer becomes simple. If the power of these stones isn't complete because this reality is divided, then he just needs to make it whole. Using the stone's connection to these worlds and his own magic, he binds these threads together, causing them to slowly tug at each other, merging these realities into one. And once fully assembled, these stones will possess the raw, unstoppable power Loki has been searching for. This would lead to the various Capcom worlds starting to merge, portals opening up linking one reality to another, characters vanishing and then reappearing in strange new locations, whole landmarks just popping up in different worlds. This leads to mass hysteria as the characters try and figure out what's happening, and of course, serves as an excuse for these heroes to duke it out with each other because this is a fighting game. In your story mode, you need to have a reason why these characters would fight. As the realities merge, Loki can feel himself growing stronger, and he decides he's almost ready to wipe out the Avengers, but then he thinks, why go to the Avengers and fight them on their home field when I can bring them to me? Why not use my newfound power to bring them, nay, their entire reality, here? Then, not only would their universe be added on to this reality, making the stones even stronger as the universe expands, but the Avengers would have to fight off zombies, dragons, robots, and other monsters, allowing Loki to toy with them in a way that would be just too tempting for a trickster god to pass up. The Avengers call the heroes of their reality together to discuss plans to search for Loki, who they believe to still be on the loose in their universe. But this meeting is interrupted as heroes begin to disappear, one after another. We can see several big names such as Thor and Doctor Strange, characters you would expect to be very useful in a fight with Loki, disappearing first and later being revealed Loki took them off the board on purpose since they were the ones most likely to stop him. A good explanation to why they're not in the initial roster, but giving us an excuse to design character models for them for when they're eventually introduced as DLC. In fact, just throwing it out there, if it was up to me, I'd have this story be episodic, dividing it up into 3 parts. The first part on the initial game, and the next 2 parts being released as free DLC when new seasons of characters are released, so that way we can include as large of a cast as possible in here. So you see where I'm going with this. The Marvel characters now get thrown into the mix, we get a few battles of the heroes being transported to new worlds to face off with the Capcom characters, but eventually they all realize they're on the same side. The Marvel heroes are able to assemble everyone together and they address what's happening, telling the Capcom characters they believe Loki is behind this. Edward Falcon steps up and says they're right, and he tells them what he knows about the Power Stones, and everyone agrees to work together. This brings us to the end of episode 1 of the story, where we get the heroes assembled, but then we cut to another secret location, as we see that Wesker has also been taking advantage of this situation, and he's pulled together some of the greatest villains of all their worlds, promising each of them their own reality to rule over after they find the one responsible for this and take his power for themselves. This would lead into episode 2, which would be released in correlation with our first big character season pass, which would be themed Bring On the Bad Guys.
Okay, so I'm gonna stop him right there. So yes, this will be an episodic story mode, but it'll also be split into different chapters for different scenarios, kind of like how the Blaze Blue story mode is split into different chapters. But it'll also kind of be like the Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transforms story mode worked, or kind of like how it was, like this big overworld map. Like, it's not an overworld map, it's more like just a grid map where you're basically choosing levels and scenarios and stuff to continue on with the story. It's gonna be exactly like that. And of course there's also going to be sub-chapters to show a little bit of behind the scenes and some extra content that you want to do. Now, all the extra stuff are not completely necessary. You only need to do the mandatory chapters. The sub-chapters, they're completely optional, just in case if you, I added them just in case if you want some fan service into all that. But anyways, he did say that there were going to be characters released in each different episodes relating to the chapters. That's not going to happen because I'm only releasing these DLC characters basically until certain parts of the story mode, or until later on, something like that. The rest of the DLC I'll discuss a little later, so let's just continue on a little bit more into the story.
So episode 2 of the story would revolve around the heroes making their way to Loki as the villains try and stop them to get there first. But as this story plays out, we'd see more of each of these worlds fading away as they're merged. We'd see people just straight up vanishing as they don't survive the merger, and the heroes realize they're running out of time, basically leading to
the all is lost moment!
But Chapter 2 of our story would end with a glimpse of hope as our heroes are able to bring back several of the heroes who had been lost in this merger, setting up the final episode, which would all be about the heroes pulling together and making one last push to save the day. The big comeback. And wouldn't you know it, the theme of our third DLC would be Heroes Return.
Yep, that's right. Oh, and remember how I said that there are going to be characters that are going to have to be locked because you'll have to unlock them by playing through the story mode or something like that? Well, that's exactly what's going to happen because of what happens in the story is going to be the reason why some of these characters are going to be locked and you can't play them until you beat the story mode. That's the reason why some characters like Thor or Doctor Strange or Chun-Li would probably be locked, but you'll also have Asura from Asura's Wrath be locked too, and Zero and maybe Scarlet Witch too, mainly because here's another scenario that I wanted to add. These characters would probably be mind controlled by another villain, or big powerful villain that's making them turn against the heroes, and the heroes have to save them from mind control, which of course is another reason why they would be locked. So that would be a pretty awesome concept. But to basically overall summarize the characters that you'll need to unlock for the game, the following characters, as I said before, that you're going to need to unlock just by playing through the story mode is Chun-Li, Thor, Zero, Doctor Strange, Beautiful Joe, Ghost Rider, Felicia, Captain Marvel, Ruby Heart, Magneto, Asura, Scarlet Witch, Lady, Mystique, Lady Dimitrescu, Gwenpool, Devilot, Star-Lord, Samanosuke, and The Thing. And of course, let's get down with the DLC characters. The DLC characters will, of course, appear in the story mode. You won't play as them technically, but you'll only play as them in certain sub-chapters. And of course, they will play a big major role in the bonus second story DLC. Remember how I said there was going to be a DLC story mode? Well, basically, here's where I'm going with this. So, as he said, Loki basically made all of these characters disappear out of existence or something like that, making them disappear. Well, remember how in Avengers, Infinity War, and Endgame, all the heroes, they all disappeared and stuff? Yet, even though they were wiped out of existence, we don't know like how they got back or what they were doing during all that all that crazy stuff in moments. Like, they don't explain what happened to them afterwards. Like, I would love something that would kind of explain something like that. Like, let's say that Loki probably teleports them to an abandoned island where all the heroes that have been wiped out have been stuck on this island, and the villains probably got merged into getting lost, and all the DLC villains would be here too. So this big island, which of course would have the DLC stages and all that stuff, this could basically showcase all of the DLC characters who have been gone missing. And this could be like a little reference to Marvel vs. Capcom 2, where at the end of this DLC story mode, you'll have to fight Abyss from Marvel vs. Capcom 2 as one of the bosses. Basically as a reference to Ruby Heart in Marvel vs. Capcom 2, trying to take down Abyss by getting the Marvel and Capcom heroes together and take them down. Maybe if they beat Abyss, that's basically how they can come back and reunite with the heroes so that they can get the job done and stop the villains. Like, I know that sounds a bit complicated, but it can work, trust me. And I think that since we're nearly at the end of the story mode, before he finishes everything up, I guess now's the time I'm going to be talking about the second DLC pass, which of course only the Season 1 and Season 2 DLC characters will be appearing in the story mode. Season 3 will not be appearing in the story mode, but they'll just be in the game anyways. But anyways, the DLC characters for Season 2, it's going to be a little bit less from now on, because now there's only going to be like 8 characters, 4 from Marvel, 4 from Capcom. So for this one, just like the last one, it's going to have returning and new characters into this season's pass for DLC. So let's just get down to it. The returning DLC characters on the Capcom side is Hayato and Firebrand. And then, of course, the brand new characters is Leo from Red Earth and Mega Man EXE. Meanwhile, on the Marvel side, the returning characters are Psylocke and Omega Red. And the brand new DLC characters is Ant-Man and the one character that everybody has been requesting oh so much to be in this game, the Punisher. Yeah, I figured everybody wanted to have the Punisher in this game. I mean, Marvel and Capcom kind of started out with his beat-em-up game called The Punisher, and people really love that game. And since people have been requesting him to be put into the Marvel vs. Capcom series, and he never got a chance, maybe this could finally be the opportunity to add the Punisher into the series. So I figured that since everybody wants to see the Punisher in the series, let's go ahead and add him into the game for DLC. But anyways, it's time to wrap up the story mode. Go ahead and finish things off, Throgi.
In the final chapter, the heroes would have one last big showdown with the villains. We could have each villain face a team of one Marvel hero and one Capcom hero teaming up, leading to their battle with Loki. Only for Loki to reveal he's picked up some friends of his own in these new worlds. While exploring these realities, he found a creature he knew would make the perfect pet, and he calls down the Nergigante from Monster Hunter. In the game, the Nergigante is a fierce, vicious elder dragon, but Loki has become so powerful, he's basically turned him into his own personal attack dog, which means in the game, Nergigante would be the story mode's mid-boss. Our heroes would unite together to defeat the giant beast, meaning now it would be time for the final battle with the fully powered up Loki, who, much like anyone who uses the Power Stones, would take on a secondary, more powerful form upon activating them. Although, I would love to put in here a secret fight, where if you make certain decisions in the story mode, then you can unlock an ending where Wesker succeeds in taking the Power Stones from Loki, and now he's your final boss. This means not only are we creating tons of single player content, we're creating single player content with replay value. So in the end, Loki is defeated, the magic users of both realities are able to undo the damage, and each world is returned to where it came, with the Avengers ending the story saying that each of those worlds have heroes to look over them, or something along those lines. Listen, how it wraps up isn't all that important.
Thank you so much, Throgi Arcade. I will forever credit you for your amazing ideas and your amazing work. But anyways, a few more things that I wanted to add at the end. He does mention that there's going to be a lot of cool fan service into the story mode, which was what the last game was completely lacking. And I have tons of ideas for that, but I don't want to explain so much because I don't want this video to be too long, and I'm going to feel a bit exhausted after working through all this, but I will tell you some of the fan service that I was thinking about afterwards. But I do like the idea that he also comes up with how all the characters from different dimensions and timelines are appearing into this game. Like basically alternate versions of these characters, like say Nina and her other Breath of Fire versions, or Mega Man Zero from the Zero series appearing in here. Like, this of course is the reason why they are these characters' alternate costumes, as shown back in episode 6 of the MVC discussion. So anyways, to also wrap things up, there's one more mode that I believe I also wanted to add to this game, and I think it's a big payoff. Boss Rush mode. That's right, everyone. We are including Boss Rush mode. I mean, come on, let's be for real. How come Mugen is able to have its own Boss Rush mode, yet basically all these other games, they don't even have their own Boss Rush? Like, I think some of them have Boss Rushes, but I digress. Anyways, what I was very disappointed with in Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite is that even though there's only one boss to fight in each of the games, I am very disappointed that they tease all these big, bad, threatening villains to act like they are the boss, but we never get to fight them. I mean, even though some of them, they could have been playable, but we don't even get to fight these big, bad monsters. Like, I want to fight the giant stone drill thing in the Monster Hunter and Wakanda fusion stage. I want to fight the giant symbiote. I want to beat up, what else did they have? I want to beat up Grandmaster Mayo for real, or basically just have MODOK fight me alongside Nemesis. I mean, MODOK was playable in the last game, or the third game to be precise. Like, why couldn't you implement that into MVCI? My god, you guys, how lazy are you? But I'm not going to complain too much about this. But this time we are adding a lot more bosses, and we're going to have a ton of them just for the sake of fan service and a lot of fun things. So how many bosses do I want to add? Well, basically, I'm just gonna go ahead and give a little simple 16 bosses in total. Now, some of these bosses are gonna have Marvel and Capcom villains teaming up with each other to kind of like give in like a little apology for some of these characters not being playable. And of course, there's gonna be some cool ideas and neat concepts for these characters to be playable. Like, and remember how Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite basically came up with the idea of merging worlds together, and they basically made characters like Ultron Sigma and the giant symbiote bioweapon monster to be like a big threat to the game. Like, you know, I thought of those concepts, fusing two entities from different worlds into one is actually a pretty neat concept, and I wanted to add that for some of the bosses here. But anyways, I think that's enough about talking about what type of bosses there is. Like, let's just get into the bosses themselves and see what type of content we'll be getting from all these bosses. Some of them will appear in the story mode, not all of them, but they'll most likely be added in updates or DLC, probably if you buy these, the story mode DLC. But let's get into what the bosses are going to be. Okay, so the bosses are Power Stone Loki, Power Stone Wesker, the Nergigante, the Symbiote Devil, Mistress Death and Jeddah teamed up together, if you guys know what the reference is supposed to mean, of course. Heisenberg taking control of Ultimo, Osmond Saddler, Surtur, Abyss from Marvel vs. Capcom 2, as I said before. We're also bringing back previous bosses like Apocalypse, Onslaught, and Galactus too. We have Grandmaster Mayo, Alistair with his own Iron Man suit, Shadow Lady and Shadow, and of course Yami from Okami, which of course is supposed to be a reference to it being the final boss of Tatsunoko vs. Capcom. And not only are these characters going to be appearing in the sub-episodes of the story mode or in boss rush mode, they will also appear as secret bosses in the arcade mode. And they'll all depend on whichever characters you are playing as. Like, if you get a certain amount of points in the arcade mode, or do some certain actions, like not losing the whole arcade ladder, or doing a certain amount of hyper combos or assist attacks a certain amount of times, you will be rewarded with fighting these secret bosses. Like, let's say Iron Man and Lady Dimitrescu would fight Heisenberg and Ultimo if they win against Power Stone Loki and do their conditions. Or even better, we could have Thor fighting against Surtur, Mega Man and Spider-Man would go up against the Symbiote Devil, Pyron and Thanos would fight Mistress Death, Strider would go up against Grandmaster Mayo, Beautiful Joe and Captain Blue will fight Alistair with the Iron Man suit, Ruby Heart and Amingo and a few other Capcom icons would fight Abyss from Marvel vs. Capcom 2. The X-Men would take on Onslaught, and so on and so forth. Alright, but listen, I think I've talked about this long enough. Now, I'm going to talk about a few more things before I wrap up this video. Like, I had a few cool ideas for some fan service that would be really, really amazing to the game. Now, Throgi Arcade already came up with this crazy fan service in his videos, and I think Chief Red Star had made some fan service ideas in his videos, or something like that. But here's some cool funny ideas or cool concepts and references that we could bring up that could benefit the game. Like, here's this one that I've been thinking about. So in the story mode, as everybody is preparing for the final battle against Loki, we go to Wakanda and we see Black Panther is like preparing for his battle, and he brings Mega Man X with him. We see that Jasiri sees all of X's armors, and they're all completely different and powerful and unique in their own way. And then this inspires Jasiri to make an armor for Mega Man X, thus creating the Wakandan armor, and we would have Wakanda Armor X. Now, this is not like in terms of gameplay, but it would make an awesome DLC alternate costume for X. This was a concept that I thought of, which would be super cool. And another piece of reference that I would love to have is that maybe this one could be used for comedy. We would have the heroes in the city just minding their own business, and then all of a sudden the Daily Bugle News starts hitting on the big monitor and screen, and then we have J. Jamie Johnson, who would be voiced by J.K. Simmons as usual, because come on, J.K. Simmons as J. Jamie Johnson is just amazing. We could have him going on the news, talking about the Marvel and Capcom characters fighting each other, and all these Capcom characters coming out of nowhere, and villains taking over, causing destruction and stuff. And then, of course, this, of course, sounds stupid, but it's just funny and still cool. But J. Jamie Johnson is just gonna straight up blame Spider-Man for the whole thing and be like, this is the work of Spider-Man. How do I know? Because Spider-Man is a menace. And then all the characters on the Capcom side would be like, looking at Peter Parker like, wait, what? And then Peter's gonna be like, it's a long story. And they could be like, man, I cannot catch a break with this guy, can I? Or how about we could have like a team up with Loki and Virgil fighting Dante and Thor, where, you know, we could have Virgil and Loki teaming up, wanting to defeat their brothers, and Thor, of course, being disappointed that Loki would do such stuff like this. Dante could be like, geez, you got a crazy sibling that's trying to kill you too? Man, I understand your pain. Because you know how Loki and Virgil are always constantly fighting their brothers for several reasons. Or maybe here's another cool, funny comedy reference. Like, maybe we could have like a little scary contest between Lady Dimitrescu and Wolverine. Like they're trying to intimidate each other. Lady D pulls out her claws from her one hand. Wolverine pulls out his claws from both of his hands. They're trying to stare each other down, only to be interrupted by Frank West taking a photo because, hey, you gotta have Frank West being a photographer for a reason. I mean, like, he's covered wars, you know. Okay, I mean, I'm not gonna try and grind that joke to the ground because I don't even know how people react to that anymore. Or maybe we could also have a scene where Captain Commando summons his friends, the ninja guy, Mac the Knife, and Babyhead, and they're like, yeah, we're a team. And then maybe we could have Iron Man and Rocket Raccoon being all confused, like, oh, why is one of your friends a baby in a mech machine? And then Babyhead could basically knock Rocket Raccoon out and be talking like, hey, don't underestimate me. I'm very smarter than I look, you know. Maybe we could have a scene where Deadpool meets Gwenpool for the first time. Like, I don't know if they canonically meet in the comics or something like that, but all I could say is that maybe we could have Gwenpool going up to Deadpool, being a big, huge fan, and then she asks if she could be his sidekick, and then Deadpool's like, no way, I'm Deadpool, I don't need a sidekick. And then Gwenpool could be like, why not? Spider-Man has a sidekick. And then Deadpool's like, hey, I may be like Spidey, but I'm completely different and original. And then maybe Peter could be all like, yeah, sure you are. Not sure how this joke would go out, but I think you guys might understand what it's supposed to mean, right? And in fact, here's a reference to a meme that I'm sure everybody is probably going to like. So maybe one of the villains is surrounding everybody with their huge giant army, and maybe we could have one of the characters be all like, well, you may have this big huge army, but... And then the villain would interrupt him and be like, let me guess, you have a Hulk? And then they'd be like, no, but we have an Asura. And then Asura would just come in and basically wreck the whole entire army with his powerful punches and rage attacks. Cause, you know, like the whole I have an army, we have a Hulk meme is just hilarious. Except, think about that, except it's replaced with Asura. Or maybe there could also be some like cool communications, like maybe we could have Donovan and Ghost Rider talking with each other, talking about how they've been cursed and they really don't like their, well, Donovan doesn't like his dark side and Ghost Rider doesn't like being cursed and stuck being the way he is, and they kind of want to be free from all this and live their own normal lives once again, because, I mean, hey, when it comes to Donovan and Ghost Rider, I think they can both relate. And one more reference that I want to make to Avengers Infinity War, like, as the characters are fighting together and stuff, We could have a scene where Rocket Raccoon and Dante are communicating together, like how Rocket did with Winter Soldier. He'd be looking at Dante with all of his weapons and abilities and stuff. Rocket could be like, hey, how much for the guns? And then Dante's like, not for sale. And he's like, okay, well, how much for the swords? And then Dante just ignores him and continues fighting. Rocket would be like, man, I'm gonna get that sword. I mean, wouldn't that be funny? But okay, I think now it's time to finally reveal Season 3's DLC to wrap up this video. Okay, so it's gonna be the same as Season 2 with 8 characters, but there's no more returning characters, sadly, so for the rest of the DLC, it's just gonna be straight up brand new DLC characters from now on. So anyways, the new DLC characters that are going to be released on the Capcom side will be Rouge, Chibitarasu, Gil, and Mr. X. And of course, on the Marvel side, we have Crystal, Bullseye, Carnage, and Falcon. And I think that finally wraps up the entire roster to Marvel vs. Capcom 4, ladies and gentlemen. I just want to say I had a really good time making all of this, and just maybe I'll just leave you guys with a custom-made gameplay video that I made in Gacha Club to show something off with the gameplay mechanics and yada yada yada, stuff like that. So I'm just gonna leave it to you guys, and maybe I'll see you guys in another video. So peace out, everyone.
The day of judgment is upon you, scum. Target confirmed. Commencing operation.
Who will come out on top? Ready. Fight! Here comes a new challenger.
Holla, holla.